Well, welcome everybody to another episode. And fun fact about today, we're going to be talking from the future and the present. So I'm super excited about today's episode. Uh, and most excited because I think this is a question that a lot of people usually have. It's like, how do I get a job in UX? And how do I use, for me, it's like, how do I use my strengths and stuff that I have done in the past? How do I use things that they're in my environment to gain that experience and really start selling myself in a better way? Before I continue talking about nonsense, why don't we bring our guest of the day? So, Karen, come on in.
Hello, I'm
Hello.
from the future.
Yes, yes, thank you so much for I think this is a fun fact, and it happened to me like all the time. I do work East time.
Yeah.
I live in the Pacific time, and then I never know what really is happening. So, what are you tell us about you, and where is in the future that you are?
So, hi everyone. My name is Karen. I am a UX designer based in London. So, it is 2 minutes past midnight. It's a long story. I won't get into it, but it turns out I don't know how to read. So, I'm a UX designer from London. I work at a company called Kaluza, which is an energy startup. We're based in B2B. And prior to Kaluza, I graduated in 2018. I spent 6 long years studying mechanical engineering. And
Mhm.
then after university, I went on to do a graduate program. And from our conversation, Julia, the more people I talk to, it
Yeah.
is a UK thing,
Okay.
graduate
Okay.
program. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
after my technology graduate program at a telecommunications company, I went on to work at a pharmaceutical company. That was my first product design type role. And then now at Kaluza.
Nice, perfect. Okay, I love this question again. This is one of my favorite, mostly because I always find like cool things about people. Because I usually when I meet one-on-ones, to tell them about UX and team and about me, usually we don't have that much time to share everything, the amazing things that we can share. So usually this is always a surprise for me. So tell me a fun fact or interesting fact about you.
I'm probably going to make it work related, but I've worked on a nuclear power plant and I've actually
Mm.
been up front, close and center to a nuclear reactor in the proper suit and wearing the radiation meter and
Oh wow.
yeah, it was an experience. Just
Yeah.
being up front, close and center to a nuclear reactor because I had done a 1 year work experience at a nuclear power plant, and yeah, that was an experience, I would
Yeah, I
say.
imagine you. I mean, it brings me right away to Los Simpson when Homer. I'm thinking in Spanish when Homer is walking and the little thingy goes into his suit and he just bring it home and or I mean, Stranger Things if you want to be more like actual these days, but current. Anyway, let's start talking about UX. That's what we're here for.
Yep.
Uh, you tell us a little bit about you, like everything that you have done, and like it's like when is UX coming into the story? Like how did you get into UX?
It's a funny story because I had always been interested in design, but it never occurred to me that it was something that I could study at university. But that's a different story for a different day. So it's kind of full circle how I ended up being in design again. But on the graduate program, so our graduate program is a 2 year program where you do different rotations in a company. And during my final placement, I started to work on customer journeys. And one of my colleagues actually said to me, "Hey, Karen, you're actually good. You're actually good at this. Is this something that you might want to pursue?" And I kid you not, I actually started Googling customer journey jobs because I didn't know it was called UX design. So Google had told me that it's UX design, user experience. And then that's how I got into it. And then I had asked my manager at the time, who was absolutely amazing. I said to him, "Well, my project's coming to an end. Is there a possibility that you could find some UX design work in a parallel project, a parallel team, or a parallel program?" And a few weeks later, he came back to me and he said, "Karen, I've got something for you. Is this something that you want to do?" And I said, "Yes." And that's kind of how UX design came about.
I mean, I love when, again, these experiences of people that you work with really cares about you. And I think for me, this is every time that I hear someone is like, no, they saw my potential, they saw what I can do, and they told me, hey, are you interested in this? So I feel like it's super lucky for all these people, for you to have someone that really take you like seriously and really start analyze you and seeing your potential. And I feel like that always helps so much. Mm-hmm.
Definitely, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, well, you talk a little bit that you, and I mean that's a good one too. You ask your boss, "Hey, is there any opening? Is there anything that I can do in this role?" And I feel like sometimes that's so scary for people to ask. Yes, it's like, oh, I don't know if they will do it. But I feel, again, this goes is, if you don't ask, you don't get, and you are
Exactly.
100% into the no section instead of 50 yes and 50 no. So how did you end up landing that first UX job?
It's actually quite I'm going to say this a lot. It's quite funny. Maybe it isn't actually funny, but I had a window, I guess, where I had to make a decision. Do I want to stay internally at the company I was at on the grad program, or do I also want to pursue externally as well? So I decided to do both. And I actually created a portfolio, which was a PowerPoint presentation, exported as a PDF. And then when I was applying to UX jobs, UX like junior jobs, I noticed that that wasn't actually getting me anywhere. People were looking at it, and I'm guessing it was atrocious, that it wasn't getting me anywhere. And it was just like a few projects that I had done on the grad program. And I thought, okay, what can I do? So I actually made a Wix website. I added in a profile. I introduced myself, and then I just started applying again to companies. And the pharmaceutical company, this was at the height of the pandemic as well, in March 2020.
Okay.
April,
Wow.
May
Yeah.
2020.
Like, yes.
And then that's where the frustration came. There were hiring freezes. Companies were contacting me saying, we're not going to be recruiting anymore. There was so much uncertainty. But luckily, at the pharmaceutical company, GlaxoSmithKline, they were recruiting. And I guess they must have liked something that was on my CV. And I went through the process. And I must say that that wasn't reflective of a traditional UX design process, because they didn't even look at my portfolio. I didn't do a portfolio review, even though I had it. I had the Wix website.
Yeah.
So I guess that was maybe an exception. But nevertheless, they did ask me some UX design questions. Give an app critique of your favorite app. What is agile? Although I don't think that's a UX specific question, but yeah, it was a bit strange because it was a bit of an exception. It wasn't your traditional UX process. But going back to the question, it was just applying and finding something that came up. And also that was available since it was at the height of the pandemic. But I'm very grateful for that opportunity, because if I didn't get that, I would have been jobless. So I am so glad that they were recruiting and I got it. But that's kind of how I wormed my way in.
I feel like if you, let's say, imagine yourself at that point, what do you think that they were your strengths outside of UX? Because that's what they saw on you. Yes, it was like you mentioned, it was not the UX, as they didn't ask you that many UX questions, so they didn't see your portfolio. What do you, if you remember, something in your resume that you think that stand up outside of UX that make you a good candidate at that point?
That's a great question, because then you start to think about your soft skills. So for me, I absolutely love public speaking and I love presenting. And in that sense, when you're working with stakeholders, you have to do presentations, you have to do workshop facilitation. So that was something that I had mentioned a lot during my interview, that I like doing those things. And I also recognize that it's very rare to find someone who says, hey, I want to present in front of 300 people, because I'm yet to meet that person. But for me, it was very much on the soft skills side. I also think being on a graduate program helped, because I worked in different areas of the company. So I worked in Internet of Things, I worked in cybersecurity, I worked in transformation. So in that sense, I guess they found me suitable. But just on the soft skills side, it was very much, I was great at communication. I had come off a mechanical engineering degree, which is very STEM focused, problem solving, analytical. I do think that also played a big role, because that's not an easy degree to study. I studied it for 6 years and it was quite intense as well. So a lot of like my skills I picked up from my degree as well.
And I feel like I talk to a lot of people that are switching careers, and at one point, I mean, I'm a switcher. I changed careers too, and I feel like because at least myself, I didn't come from like university, like say something like you, like at 6 years of a school. It was mostly like my career in retail, and I feel like for us, people who go to a boot camp, we feel a little like pressure. Yes, of course, because we can never compare to someone who went to university for 6 years. But I feel is for us, and I think it's something that you brought up. What skills do we have already in our toolbox that we are so good at it? And really bring them in and being conscious about it. And I think that's usually the hardest part, because you go and see all the job descriptions, and the job descriptions sometimes are not really loud about these skills. It's something that you can need to sell about you. So I think it's really important to have really conscious, a list of precise things that you're really good at it, and that you can sell everywhere that you're going.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you have something else?
No, I was just going to say, I feel people forget that they have transferable skills. Even if it was a part-time job, even if it was a side hustle, even if it was university, even if it was something small, I do feel that people forget that they do have transferable skills. And I wonder if it's worth people doing a task where they just sit down and they list every experience and they list every skill that they've learned from that experience. I think people will be surprised about how much skill they have.
Well, I mean, I feel when you start talking with designers already on the roles of working for a while, and you ask them, "Hey, what do you do day to day?" Then it's like, oh, "Okay, I have done that. Like I have talked to work in a team. I have present. I have facilitate. Like I do these all the time." But I think people again is like the connections and missing, because again you are new into the field, or you just finish school, even though you have so many years of experience in something else, you're missing that connection. And I think when people start making that connection is when they're like, boof, they start like getting interviews, getting calls, or getting jobs just because they're showing off what they can do. You mentioned too that you have worked in so many different roles and then different industries. And what happens sometimes is if that industry is not really into design, onto UX, as UX is still kind of like a new thing, there is some things that they don't understand.
True. Yep.
So what do you think that are the challenges that as a designers have when we go to spaces like this?
I'm going to try not to go on a rant, but
we do it all the time. We do it all the time, yes.
But in terms of challenges, the first one I would say is not being a part of a design team. Mm-hmm. So at the moment at Kaluza, this is the first company that I've worked at where I am in a team of content designers, researchers, service designers, technical writers. Previous to Kaluza, it was a struggle. I was either the only designer and there was no one I could collaborate with. There was no one who I could bounce ideas from. There was no one who I could review my designs or anything. And it wasn't until I started talking to other designers. It's actually a very common problem. It's a very common problem to not be a part of a design team. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just such a struggle. That's the first one. The second one I would say is people are aware of UX design, but have a different definition. So an example is one of my previous managers. She had a completely different understanding of UX design to me. And I remember once I had finished my research, she's like, oh, okay, you're finished now. You can move on to another project. And I thought, no. So it turns out that we had completely different understandings of UX design. That was a very common challenge I've seen in my previous roles. And then the last one I would say is you've joined a company, but people are aware of design, but they just don't know how to interact with you. They don't know how to work with you because product owners or developers or whoever in the team, they've heard of it, but they have worked in other roles where there may have not been design. So sometimes they see design as a hindrance because they're doing something and we're here with our white flags like, hey, I can help you. But they just don't know how to work with you. So I've seen that as well. And to me, I would say that those are the 3 common challenges, at least that I've seen across like all of my roles, but especially my previous roles.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think it made me think about a question I had today, like this week. Is like, okay, we are bringing this new feature into, and they asked me, how long does it take to design the screens? I said, well, design the screens takes me, I don't know, a week. And I'm just making a buffer. Yes, it's like a week. But I said, that's not the problem. Like making the screens is like the easiest part, but it's like to making sure that the screens are useful and that we are covering everything that we need to cover, that will take us maybe around 2 months. And it's like,
exactly, yeah.
Like, and we are like a really client focused organization. But I think at the same time is a lot of things, because you can see the screens, is something that is visible for people. But I think sometimes they don't see the research, as maybe we don't do it like explicit to people. So it's like, I was comparing, like we went through these for that case, it was, even though it sounds like a phone number, like asking for phone numbers is easy, it took us like almost 2 months and a half to gather all the information that we needed. And until today, 6 months later, is still questioning everywhere about this, how to ask for a phone number, and you will think, I mean, everybody asks for a phone number, how hard it could be, but there are so many dependencies of this. Anyway, so yes,
risks, dependencies, everything under the sun and the moon. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Yeah.
Okay, but there are some things that are missed too. Some people that things that are not true about UX, and I think and maybe, and I will be in one of those blogs at one point. We were in there, because when you are learning something and you are not aware, maybe I have say some myths that I think they're true, but they're not true. But I want you to share yours. What are those UX myths that are not true?
I have three in mind, so I'm going to try and power through them. But the first one is the first myth I would say is, if a company's hiring for a UX designer, that means that that company knows what to do with you. That is not true.
Okay, this is a good one. This is a good one. Yeah.
This is such a good one. And I feel as if people don't talk about it enough. But for me, I strongly relate to it because I've been in that situation where I don't know if it was a combination of me not asking the right questions during the interview process, or that company just didn't know what to write on their job description. But I've gone into the role and I thought to myself, wait, this doesn't line up with the job description. I'm so confused. So I think sometimes you read the job description and we think, oh, they have a structured way of working. They have fixed processes. Everybody understands UX design. I know what projects I'm going to be in. I know what's expected of me in the first 3 months and first 6 months and first 9 months. And I'm going to get my personal development plan and I'm going to work towards my design career. Yeah, that's very rare. If you have a company that works like that, stay at that company for 20 years, because I am yet to find that company. Barclays is a great company, but previous companies, it was just like, did I make a mistake? Is this normal? And then you just start questioning things, and then you go down the rabbit hole, and then imposter syndrome comes in, and then other things come in. But yeah, that's definitely a myth. I think a lot of companies hire for UX designers or researchers or UI designers, and I think they just don't know what to do with them. I remember in my previous company, they were trying to be agile. They were going through a transformation and they were trying to be agile. So they kind of hired because they were trying to be agile, and then you get there and you're thinking, but that's not what agile is about. So yeah, that's definitely a myth.
I'll say, sorry, maybe to
no,
this.
go on.
I think what happened, and I mean, everybody does this. Oh, let's copy and paste what they say in this job description. I think everybody's needing a UX. Let's bring it in. And I mean, maybe it could be with the best intention. And I think maybe someone said, hey, I saw that they hire a UX designer at this company, and look at how much better it got. But again, we are so new, so it's so different to say. And again, I'm going to compare my partner. She's an accountant. So the accountant that is so, they've been forever, and they have such a structure everywhere. And even though there's some things that they are still not as fixed as it is, and we are talking about an accountant, that they have so many rules and they have big books that they have to follow along. We don't have that. Yes, they change every year. She shows like a Bible like this, and with little letters that you cannot even read. But yeah, so imagine with a career like this that is being forever, and there's still no sure thing. So yes, copy and paste job descriptions happen everywhere, and it happened the same at any career. So
yeah. Just on that quickly as well, I think another problem is that people are looking, well, not people, companies are looking at big tech, and I think what companies forget is that they're big tech for a reason, right? If we think of Meta, just an example, they've achieved so much in so little time compared to a bigger company, which will take longer to transform, for example. So I do feel that companies are thinking, oh, let's just do what Google's doing. Like you said, like copying and pasting, but that doesn't necessarily work for their business model or for their organization structure or for their company.
Well, and I mean, that goes back to what we do in our job, that is making sure that little things like this work. Okay, your second one. What is your second myth?
The second one is, this isn't UX generic, but I did want to mention it because I didn't realize the importance of it until I got some more wisdom. But a myth is your manager will advocate for you. And it's very rare to find a very good manager. I've had 7 managers, and only 2 of them have been exceptional, and 1 of them has been good. And one of my mentors many centuries ago, she said, you need to focus centuries ago. She said, you need to focus on 3 things. And that is performance, image, and exposure. So performance is, are you doing a good job? Are you hitting your targets, or are you doing a good job? The second one is image. Do people like working with you? How do you come across? Things like that. And then the third one is exposure. Are you talking about your work in those Slack channels? Are you talking about that work that you're doing in those workplace pages? Are you sharing your work in MS Teams or whichever communication platform everyone uses? So if you stick to those 3 things, you are your own manager, if that makes sense. I think when you're younger, I don't know if that's the right word, lack of experience, is that you put your manager on a pedestal. Oh, my manager will do this for me. My manager will do that for me. My manager will give me the promotion. My manager will tell me my work. And I'm starting to realize that that's not entirely true, because your manager is managing other people. They have things going on. It's a bit crazy if you're a manager, let's face it. But those are the 3 things that I would recommend.
I love this, and I think for me is one of the things that I do talk with everybody, and maybe I don't have them like listed like that. I was like, I just talk about things instead of having like a list. So this is going to be really helpful. And I think, again, and I think for me, it comes from, I work in retail management for so long, and understood the industry is like this. Retail is like this. You post it on LinkedIn, oh, I got this performance badge or whatever, or we are number 1 in whatever it is. And that was the only way for us to show off. Otherwise, no one is going to come here and tell people what we did. And I think it's even a little bit harder now working online to do these things. You have to be a little more like really conscious and said, okay, what I'm going to do to show people what I'm doing. Maybe in the image, it has to do a lot of like how I'm building relationship with people. And for me, it's such a important thing to have at work, and these teams that we work so collaborative, and you have to keep talking to people. I mean, performance is up to you if you want to be a good performer.
That's true.
I mean, it's up to you. Like the other ones, you can kind of, even if you're a bad performer, you can still pretend that you're going to do it and pretend that you have good relationships at the end of the day. I don't know if
or
you
work to improve.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
continuous learning.
Because I have met a lot of people that are such a good talkers. They're great at exposure and great at relationships. But I think the combination of these 3 are such a good, I don't know, tools. Again, and I wanted to drop something in, like, it's important to have all of these in mind when you are looking for that first UX job, because I think all of these are going to really help you to maybe land on a place where you have a good manager and you can ask questions from day 1 when you're interviewing. Okay, Last myth 3.
Number 3, I would say is, and I'm going to try and merge this all into one. I never did a boot camp. So sometimes I feel that there's this myth that you have to do a boot camp. And I also feel that there's this myth that you would be working on traditional UX. I am still yet to work on traditional UX.
Like, I have never heard that. What is traditional UX? What
I think it's, I've just seen the double diamond process, and traditional UX is you will do each stage of that process, and you will work on two or three methods in each of those stages or processes. And when I read about UX, I read a lot about, it's about wireframes and research and discovery and working with developers and handoff. And I did do a bit of that in my previous roles, but I've never really done the end-to-end traditional UX, if that makes sense. And again, going back to the boot camp as well, I think there are different ways of getting into UX, because a lot of the bootcamp reviews I read online, a lot of them have said, looking back, they wouldn't necessarily have done a UX bootcamp, which I always thought was quite interesting. Not everybody, just some percentage of people. So for me, I would say that's another myth, that the bootcamp is the only way. That's not true. And you'll be working on traditional UX again, like that's not true either.
Yeah, I think, well, now that you mention us, traditional, I am in that environment though. And I tell a lot of people that come to me is like, what do you do at work? And I'm like, please do not take it as the baseline. This is what you will do. Like, what I have done is really rare. Like, we have worked end-to-end process, and we have done absolutely like all the frameworks and all the diamond idea. And we are
Can I come back for you?
I love my job, though, honestly. And we are about to start the same process for our second MVP. But if you compare some people in my same organization, in their teams, they haven't done that. So again, honestly, I think I was really lucky to be able to where I am and have. When people is like, oh, did you have used what you learned at the boot camp? Like, we have used a lot of the tools that they give us at the boot camp, definitely at my work. But this is weird. I don't think that a lot of people that's what I have done. Okay. Do you have any more myths?
3 is the magic number, so no.
Okay, perfect.
That is going to be it.
Great. And I think just to close up from like the beginning and the episode that is how to find your first UX job, any advice for designers that you would like to talk about, and then we can close up with everything else.
I guess if you don't have experience, it's that vicious cycle of, well, I need experience. To get experience, I need a job. But to get a job, I need experience. The one thing I would say is that, number one, if you're in that position, these are the things that I've read and seen that have worked. So the first one I would say is volunteering opportunities, whether that is locally in your area. But I know there are online websites, for example, where you can volunteer with charities, and they're looking for UX designers, product designers, software developers, agile coach. So if you're able to find those websites online, and I think I have 2 of them, so I can list them in the comment when I go to upload this video on LinkedIn. So those websites do exist. The second one is there is a Slack group called UX Rescue, and they have projects where you can apply and say, hey, these are my key skills. I can't speak anymore. This is what happens when it's past midnight. I'm like a zombie. But there's a Slack group called UX Rescue, and they post projects where they're looking for like product designers, UX designers, researchers again. And the idea is that you comment on the project and say, hey, these are the skills that I can bring. This is why I'm a good fit. So those opportunities do exist online. I think it's just a case of, finding them. So I'll put a link down below. And then the second thing I would say is there are so many people in the same boat. I guess there's nothing really stopping people to say, hey, you need a job, I need a job. Why don't we try and work on an app? Why don't we try and bring a developer on board? Whether it's an app or a website that you make up, whether it's a problem that you've seen and you want to solve that problem, or whether you want to make a difference in your community and you think something would help, a digital product would help. There's nothing really stopping people from taking that proactiveness. But I feel like that sounds a bit too easy to say. I understand the hardness in that. But what I'm saying is that I think we're living in an age where I think it's a bit easier, not easy, but easier to do something, if that makes sense. Like you can make a YouTube channel, you can make an Instagram, you can reach out to other designers. And do you see what I mean? There's so much you could do. I hope that helps. I feel like I went on a ramble there. But yeah, I just think there's a lot nowadays of people being in the same boat and just kind of utilizing each other, I would say.
Yeah, totally. This is something that I keep bringing up to people. It worked for me, and I feel for when I finished the boot camp, and again, it was 2020. It was June 2020 when, of course, there was no jobs, and the jobs were really like slim. And who wants to hire someone who just finished a boot camp in 2020? Like no one. But it's like how you can take over charge of your decisions. Okay, so no one wants to hire me. All good. I keep trying. But what I can do is to start a boot camp, start a podcast, start a YouTube channel, look for developers. And I mean, I would say that it's that easy. You just need to ask. Like there are so many Slack channels, communities, not just UX designers, but where you can find, again, developer, product managers, whatever you want. And you just say, hey, I have this idea for a project. Who wants to work with me? And most likely, if you post in like the 20 plus groups that there are, someone is going to say yes. At one point, I was working like in different 3-5 projects at the same time because I say yes to everything, and I put it like it's like let's do it. And at one point, it's like, okay, I don't like you anymore. I'm quitting all of this. But at the same time, give me such a great experience of knowing, okay, I don't want to work in this type of project, so I don't want to work with this type of people. And this all was free. Nothing. Well, I was working for free, but it gave me so much experience in getting the experience that I needed. Anything else, or is this it? This is it. Or do you have any?
One thing I would say is design communities. I only discovered design communities this year, and shout out to the design communities. Can I shout out to a few design communities? Vancouver Design
Check-in. Yes,
even though I'm not from North America, but you can join international communities. Shout out to UX Calgary, even though I haven't introduced myself.
Oh my goodness! Thank you, Julieth. I mean, you like all my favorite ones. Yes. Yeah. Keep going.
And then Femke, she is a YouTuber. She has her own community. Yes. Her community is really amazing as well. Miro, they have a community as well. Shout out to them. The reason why I'm shouting out these communities is that you can meet other designers. Like you can go for one-to-ones, except for Miro, but that's slightly different. But all the other communities, you can have a portfolio review. You can learn about events. You can have one-to-one matches. You can have group matches. I think UXL, they have a really great Slack community as well. And it's just an opportunity to connect with other designers. You can see other people's portfolios, you can learn skills, you can read articles. Design communities are really powerful, and you don't have to join your local one. For example, I've joined, for some strange reason, Canadian ones, even though I'm not Canadian, as you can probably tell. But they are so powerful, and I didn't realize how powerful they were until I joined this year. So that's something that I would definitely recommend, is to join design communities.
And I would say most of them, they're free.
Yes.
So there's nothing for you to stop you. You just have to apply for it. Also, yeah, we will definitely share. I will share my favorite in here, and maybe this is how you ended up knowing about UX and tech, most likely, because you just mentioned all the ones that I'm in, and I put myself everywhere. Yes. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us from the future.
I'm gonna go sleep. That's what I'm gonna go do.
Yes. Thank you so much again, and see you next time. Thank you. Bye everybody.